On Christmas Eve, Fritz and Mary were looking forward to unpacking their presents. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was their uncle with a bunch of gifts in his hands. The children were very happy to see him. Then they began to unpack the presents. Mary got fancy dolls, toy dishes, and a beautiful silk dress. Fritz also got what he wanted, a magnificent horse and a mouse king. Mary noticed that there was a soldier under the tree. It was the Nutcracker, designed to neatly crunch hard nuts. The girl really liked it. But Fritz said it was his gift and tried to take it from his sister. The children stretched the Nutcracker so far that they tore his arm off. The broken toy became unnecessary for the boy. Mary was very upset and burst into tears. But my uncle was able to repair the soldier. The girl was happy and hugged him gently. The day was very busy, so she soon got tired and fell asleep right under the tree. During her sleep, Mary heard strange sounds. They were like mouse fuss. The girl opened her eyes. The objects in the house seemed much larger than they were. And the tree under which she fell asleep became absolutely gigantic. Mary realized that it was not the objects that had increased, but that she had decreased. Suddenly, the Mouse King with his army appeared before the eyes of the astonished girl. Mary was very frightened and wanted to run away. But the giant mice stopped her. And then a miracle happened. The Nutcracker jumped to his feet and grabbed the girl. They instantly climbed the tree to the bookshelf, and along it got to Fritz's toys. There was a whole collection of tin soldiers. The Nutcracker called for help. The soldiers immediately jumped to their feet and ran after him. The Nutcracker took command of the army, and the soldiers began to fight the army of the Mouse King. The battle between toys and mice was fierce. But, unfortunately, there were too many mice, and the Nutcracker army began to suffer defeat. Mary saw this and ran out of her hiding place. She threw her shoe at the Mouse King and hit him right in the head, and he fell to the floor unconscious. The rest of the mice realized that the battle was lost and ran away in all directions. Mary ran to the Nutcracker, but he lay unconscious, as he was badly wounded by the Mouse King. The girl thought that he was dead, and began to cry bitterly. And suddenly, a beautiful fairy appeared behind Mary. She decided to help the girl. With a wave of her wand, she revived the Nutcracker. With a second wave of her wand, the fairy turned the soldier into a handsome prince. Mary and Nutcracker looked at each other with loving eyes, and could not take their eyes off. With a wave of her wand for the third time, the fairy took the couple in love to the kingdom of sweets. The trees there were made of candy, and the flowers were made of marmalade. It was a wonderful place. Mary closed her eyes for a second in pleasure. And suddenly, she heard the voice of her mother, who called her by name. Opening her eyes, the girl saw her mother, who looked at her in confusion. Mary also could not understand what was happening. The girl told about her wonderful journey, but her mother only smiled sweetly. Then Mary saw the pewter Nutcracker in her arms. And then she realized that she had slept under the tree all night, and everything that happened to her was just a vivid dream. A few years later, the nephew of their godfather came to visit Mary and Fritz. As soon as he entered the house, the girl almost fell to the floor in surprise. The boy looked like the Nutcracker as 2 drops of water. He also liked Mary at first sight. After some time, they got married, and lived no worse than in the magic kingdom of sweets.
In the deepest part of the sea stood the palace of the Sea King. And he had 6 daughters. They played in the garden all day long. Unlike the other princesses, the youngest was quiet and brooding, and her name was the Little Mermaid. Most of all, she loved listening to stories about the world of people. Traditionally, a mermaid could only rise to the surface for the first time in her 16th birthday. And now it's time to see the land and the youngest princess. She surfaced close to the ship, singing and music coming from the deck. This was the first time the princess saw the ship. In the cabin of the ship, the little mermaid noticed a handsome prince. For a long time she could not take her eyes off him. Suddenly, a violent storm began at sea. The prince's ship hit a rock and shattered into pieces. In complete darkness, lightning flashed, and the little mermaid saw the prince fall into the sea. She rescued him by bringing him ashore. Soon the prince was found by a girl passing by. When he woke up, he smiled at her and thanked her for saving her. The little mermaid became sad that the prince did not even know about her existence. She dived into the water and swam away. From her father's stories about people, the little mermaid knew that they considered the fishtail of mermaids to be ugly. Therefore, in order to please a person, one had to acquire 2 legs. The next day, the little mermaid went to the sea witch. The sorceress agreed to make a potion for her that would turn the fishtail into a pair of slender legs. The princess's gait would be graceful, but every step she took would bring unbearable pain. And if the prince married another, the little mermaid would turn into sea foam. In return, the witch wished to take her wonderful voice from the girl. The princess was ready for anything to be close to the prince, and she agreed. Having sailed to the prince's palace at night, the little mermaid drank a magic drink. A sharp pain shot through her and she passed out. Waking up in the afternoon, the girl saw the prince in front of her, and lowering her eyes, found 2 legs instead of a fishtail. The prince tried to find out who she was and how she got here, but the little mermaid could not speak. Despite her airy gait and beautiful dancing, she felt terrible pain in her legs. The prince became more and more attached to the little mermaid, but still treated her like a cute little child. It never entered his head to make her his wife. Once the prince admitted that his heart is occupied by the one who saved him long ago on the shore, and they are going to get married. The little mermaid was very upset, but could not tell him the truth. When it was time for the wedding, the prince invited the little mermaid to go with the newlyweds on a honeymoon trip. A luxurious honeymoon tent is spread out on the deck of the ship. The little mermaid had one last evening left to be with the one for whom she left her home, gave her wonderful voice and endured endless torment every day. But he didn't even notice them. When silence fell on the ship, the little mermaid sat on the deck and waited for the first rays of the sun. Suddenly, near the ship, she noticed her sisters. They tearfully asked the witch to help save the princess from death. The sorceress gave them a sharp knife, with which the little mermaid was to pierce the heart of the prince. A drop of his blood would turn her legs into a tail, and she could return to the sea. The little mermaid looked into the tent, and saw there a sleeping couple in love. She did not find the strength to take the prince's life, and threw the dagger into the sea. With grief, the little mermaid threw herself into the water. But the kindness of the princess melted the heart of the wicked witch. The sorceress cancelled her spell, and the little mermaid again had a fishtail instead of human legs.